I am honored to introduce our guest, Senator Roland Gutierrez. The senator represents Senate District 19 in the Texas legislature, which stretches across 17 counties, including several on the Texas-Mexico border, part of San Antonio, and the cities of Eagle Pass, Del Rio, and, of course, Uvalde. Prior to being elected to the Senate, he served on the San Antonio City Council. Just heard a good story about how that happened. And for 6 terms in the Texas House. He received his BA from UT San Antonio, another thing we talked about a moment ago. Turns out I think we overlapped there a little bit. And his JD from St. Mary's University, and he is, importantly, I think, for this conversation, a practicing immigration lawyer in San Antonio. So welcome, Senator. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Now, of course, I want you to share your argument for why you should be the Democrat that takes on Ted Cruz next year. And I want to hear what you think why you think Senator Cruz should be relieved of his duties in the Senate. But first, you have the difficult distinction of representing a district that has been very much in the news over the last couple of years and on the minds of many Texans. So I want to start by getting some reports from you about the constituents in a couple of places in your district. And I want to start with Eagle Pass, which has been in the headlines across the state and nationally again in the last few days. By all reports, there has been another surge of migrants after something of a lull. And local authorities appear to be overwhelmed. So I'm wondering what you can tell us about the situation there and what you think needs to be done, in the short term and then afterward, and in the longer term to help local authorities.
Well, thank you, Jim. They gave us the couch. I feel like I'm in therapy here. When we talk about Uvalde, we probably will be in a little bit of therapy. But I'll tell you that, first off, I want to thank the Texas Tribune, Evan Smith and Ross, for everything that they've done to put all of this together, because it is about getting information to the public and having people make informed decisions and telling the truth. This campaign, why I'm running against Ted Cruz, is about telling the truth. And it's about getting beyond the politics and the political answers. You should expect direct and straight answers from people that want to serve you, not political speak. The border is in one of those spaces where Republicans like to talk a lot of crap. They like to go down there and take pictures and look tough. Ted Cruz is one of those people. Talk tough. The fact is they have no solutions to speak of. And it's also a place where Democrats don't want to talk about. They think that it's a losing proposition. Let me tell you, we need to have immigration reform that works. We'll talk about the arriving immigrants first, and then we'll talk about the plans for the future. The arriving immigrant situation is something that we've been dealing with for years on end in this state. For years on end, way before Biden. Democrats and Republican presidents have had to deal with this issue. It's part of why the United States needs to do a better job in Latin America. Let's be very clear. That's step one. But the fact is, under this administration, in the last 4 months, border crossings have been cut down by 70% because of the reintroduction of Title VIII. No matter how you feel about it, I'm not an open borders kind of Democrat, so there's another answer for you that's a straight answer. But I am a Democrat that will give you an immigration solution to what ails us. Title 42 under Trump, the so-called stay in Mexico policy. So my day job is I'm an immigration lawyer. I know this. As under Title 42, people came and went with impunity, and they were never tagged, and they were never processed. And when they'd come in again, they would never get that illegal reentry one way or another. Like I said, they got to come and go with impunity. Donald Trump was great at branding things, and he convinced Republicans and even people on the border that he had an effective position and an effective move to keep migrants out of the United States, and it simply didn't happen. The fact is, as I said earlier, Title VIII has worked, but we need something better than that. We need to upend the entire immigration visa alphabet soup. I represent ranchers. I represent farmers that want an H-2A visa that works. I represent employers that deal with the H-2B visa that has a quota every year, and it needs to work. Both of those two visas are woefully full of bureaucratic mess, to be quite honest. Just look at the H-2A. The rancher gets a worker for 10 months, and then they've got to go back for 2 months. That is not our modern farming mechanism. It just doesn't happen like that anymore. After 3 years, they've got to reapply, and then they have one more try, and then they got to go back to Mexico. None of that makes any sense in our modern-day economy. The United States needs 30 million jobs today that Americans don't want to work in. Limited service areas, low tech, light construction, even chauffeurs, even not chauffeurs, but drivers on 18-wheelers and such. We have an employment crisis like you can't believe. So imagine an immigration solution that's like this. You take the 13 million undocumented that have been here for 30 years and you give them a pathway to residency because we should, because they've been building America. That's a fact. Notice I said residency. After those 5 years, they'll be eligible to apply for citizenship. For the 1 million dreamers, you give them a pathway to citizenship because those kids, through no fault of their own, are here, and most of them, half of them, don't even speak Spanish. And then the arriving migrants, it's very simple. You take a country of origin program. The fact is, I know they all come as asylees. Most are not, and most get deported. We need to have a country of origin program where you go to the consulate in Colombia or Guatemala or Peru or Bolivia, or if you're in Venezuela, you go to the adjoining country because we don't have a consulate in Venezuela at present, and you go to the Department of Labor kiosk in my plan, and you go apply for a job for a meat processing plant in Omaha or in Schertz, Texas, or Austin or New York City, you name it. You apply for that job, you get married to that job, you do a background check, and in 60 to 90 days, not only do you now have a job in the United States, but you have travel requirements, as is required for H-2Bs and H-2Bs, and you're not putting yourself and your family in danger. Imagine an immigration system like that actually worked. But we've got Republicans just talking just a lot of crap about it, and you got Democrats that don't want to tell the truth and don't want to talk about it because they think it's a losing issue. That's a plan that would work. It's a plan that we should be talking about, and it's a plan that we should be moving forward.
In the short term, do you think the Biden administration's short-term decision to approve work permits for the Venezuelan migrants that have been admitted to the United States, good solution, bad solution?
Listen, it's a solution. It's at least an attempt to do something, and we must do something. The fact is, he can't do it alone. We have to have a Congress that's willing to work, and we have a Congress that just will not, absolutely not put forth a reasonable solution to anything. And you have the United States Chamber of Commerce, not exactly a bastion of liberalism. Not a whole bunch of Democrats in that bunch. But every one of those people within the United States Chamber of Commerce wants an immigration solution. And the Texas small Chamber of Commerce wants an immigration solution. And every Chamber of Commerce throughout this country wants an immigration solution. So who in the hell are Republicans voting for? Because they're not even listening to their own constituents. And that's not the only issue. So it's an attempt to go out and try to fix something, but we certainly have to have more diplomacy. We got to keep trying in Venezuela. We've got to keep looking for other answers. And by God, if it means doing other things that require agencies that we have within our government, I think you all know what we're talking about. We must even look at that, because right now the current leadership of Venezuela is destroying its country, stealing their resources, robbing, and just killing its constituency. They are just killing Venezuelans, and it's not right what's happening right now in that country.
Now, circling back to the short term on the Texas-Mexico border, what's your sense of what the state can do in the short term to help those communities. We've seen, what to my mind is to my knowledge is an unprecedented increase in spending on quote unquote border security. None of that, to my mind, seems very geared towards addressing this problem in the short term in a constructive way. What can you tell your constituents? What can you tell the mayor of Eagle Pass that can be done at state level, if anything?
Jim, and I thought long and hard about how to answer this, but I don't know what smart word to use other than to tell you that Operation Lone Star is just bullshit. It really is the best word for it. This governor and Ted Cruz alongside him and all of these other actors that who they are, this has just been stunt after stunt after stunt. The problem with these stunts is that now they cost about $5 billion a biennium, money that we could be using for education and healthcare and so on. And the bigger and more fundamental part is that these stunts are now killing people. So let's look at each one of those stunts. Stopping the trucks like he did last year, which, by the way, he just started again. So he stopped the trucks. Our own economist, Ray Perryman, says that cost us about $5 billion in just logistics, rotted fruit, you name it. Billions of dollars that our economy is losing because of this man's stunt. He found 0 migrants and 0 drugs. 0 fentanyl, 0 migrants when they did that last year. Let's talk about the stunt of taking, these National Guard troops, these state guard troops down to the border. Apparently Greg Abbott has managed to pay off just about all of his friends to build pens, to service, to provide all of the necessary resources that are necessary for these folks. But apparently he didn't get into the contract to provide life preservers, because had he done that, we'd have Bishop Evans, a young man that jumped in that water to save 3 migrants from El Salvador. He'd be alive today had Greg Abbott done that. We've had over 10 National Guardsmen die because of this crazy Operation Lone Star. You've seen the most recent thing of busing the people to New York and Washington, D.C. and everywhere else. Let's be real clear. I was talking to a good hotelier friend of mine from West Texas. I won't tell you who they are. They're Republicans. And she says to me, I need workers over here. Can you help? I said, the H-2B sucks. You're going to be waiting forever. And I don't want to take your money. I'm not going to do that. I can't. I said, but hey, the governor that you vote for, he's busing people up north. And the people he's busing are not just the migrants that just walked over. They're processed migrants. They're migrants that do get what is called a credible fear finding under asylum. They are 60 to 90 days from getting a work permit. Imagine that. These are people that could work in our economy today, work in that hotel. But this jackass has them moving up north, and he wants us to tell us that he's getting rid of all the migrants. It's just absolute nonsense. And the last horrible stunt is now killing women and children. And let's be really clear. That little 1 mile of buoys absolutely has killed women and children. And you might think, well, it's just a mile and it's just a show. But what he did is they placed that in a low, shallow part of that river. And he pushed migrants into the deep water. And that mother, she died trying to save her little girl. The little girl died. And the other child died. And more people than that have died. That isn't being Republican. That isn't conservative. That is just sick. And that's what this governor is. He is a sick son of a bitch. And I want you all to clap. That's where we are with Operation Lone Star.
That pushes us pretty close into the politics of all this. But before we get to that, I do want to check in on one more part of your district. And, obviously you have had a lot of contact with survivors in Uvalde. Now that the story has kind of moved on, I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what it looks like on the ground there, how people are doing, how you think, what the community is looking like now, a little more than a year later.
It's a mess. Those people, Jim, those men and those women, many of them are my dear friends. And I think about them every day. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. But how would you like it if your child was gone? Just gone. You don't get your child back. I see things on Facebook. I see these kids alive on Facebook. That's the wonder of Facebook. I see these little girls laughing and enjoying life. And they're just gone. They're just not here with us anymore. And those families will forever be broken. The sad part is that I saw, after suing the government to get the information, I saw those children. I lost the lawsuit. I signed their non-disclosure agreement. And I've seen those children dead. And I've seen the horror that gun can do. I saw the failure of our government. I saw little children, little girls with literally no face. Imagine that. Piles of blood. Everything we teach a child to do. Turn the lights off. Turn the shades down. Go huddle together. They were huddled together in 2 stacks with 2 teachers on top of them trying to save their lives. One teacher was dead, one barely alive. Vast majority of those kids dead. Pile of blood like you can't imagine. And it was such a mess that all the streets around that school were blocked by cars. The one ambulance that was in there had that one teacher, Eva Mireles, sitting there for 45 minutes while she struggled to live. She ended up dying, as you know. There was 4 souls that came out of there with a pulse, 5. Well, those 5, 3 little babies, 2 little babies, and Eva died. Maya Zamora ended up living. She was shot 7 times in her body. She's a true hero. All those kids were braver than the cops. It is why I'm running for the United States Senate, because I am tired of the bullshit that we get from people that have run this state and have told us that we're living in a Texas miracle, because that was a Texas nightmare. Those people aren't doing so well, my friend, and I don't know that they ever will be, and I don't know that they ever should be, right?
Yeah. I hate to hear that. I want to then build on that. I want to come back a little bit to the obvious impact this had on you a little bit later, but I'm torn by the fact that this seems like a crude transition, but I also think it's actually an appropriate one. And I do want to talk about the politics of the race, and I want to ask you then, why are you the best Democratic nominee to face Ted Cruz?
Well, talking about Uvalde is tough because when you talk about it, the crowd gets quiet, and we all have these moments, and it's tough. But it's why we have to have this discussion with ourselves. Most of America glosses over this. We have these things that happen, and we forget within a few days. Ted Cruz would be thinking and praying about him for a few days, and then he'd be done with it. There's no solutions one way or another. Doesn't even want to see how the federal government failed, because they failed too. Yeah, they went in and finally killed that person, and thank God that they were there. I think that what differentiates me from Cruz and what differentiates me from other candidates in this race is that my whole life, I was born the son of immigrants to this country. My whole life, my father and my mother taught me 2 things, and that's to work and to educate myself. But just working. And you have to put in time. We worked to uncover what happened out there, and we never gave up. And we still don't all know. I know because I've seen it. There has been zero accountability from the Department of Public Safety. Imagine we just gave that guy, Steve McCraw, a $45,000 raise. That's what more than most people make in Texas, by the way. I'm better than all of these candidates, I'd imagine, because my father taught me how to work. And he said, when you see a problem, you fix it and you don't stop until it's fixed. And then I'm going to do that.
So how do you bring that to the table in a race in which it's a compelling argument based on your experience, based on your affect, based on the things you've done? It's a visceral kind of human response that is now situated in what we all know can be a very bloodless game of campaign politics. You know, we've talked a bit. I went and saw one of your Democratic competitors, probably, you know, I think thought of widely as the front runner in the race, Congressman Allred. And he's pretty clearly running a race that in which he's positioning himself as kind of the heir apparent. Like he is the favorite candidate. He presents himself almost as the default candidate. What's your sense of how you face that, and what's the argument to that?
Well, maybe later after a beer, I'll tell you my father's Socrates joke, but
I'm writing that down.
Yes. Solo sé que soy blank. You know, Socrates said, I know that I know nothing. And I think he said that because things are always changing and nothing is constant, right? My father's joke was much funnier. But listen, I don't buy into any of that. I'm not 40 years old and I'm not running out of ambition. I'm running because we must change our country. There is not an amount of political speak or so-called bipartisan incrementalism that I'm even interested in. I want to be very clear about that. And that opponent, who's a nice person, he's about as negative as I'll be against him. He touts bipartisanship like it's some kind of, good thing. And sure, it is a good thing if it's real. If it was real, the Republicans in that building, they don't want to be bipartisan on anything. They play a war game with us, and we're playing checkers. We must fight them tooth and nail at everything they throw at us, because their policies are killing our children. Their policies are choking the middle class. There is no American dream anymore because of Republican policies in Texas and beyond. We're trying to figure out college debt on the back end. Shit, most countries in this world offer free college, believe it or not. The leading countries in the world have free tertiary education. Imagine what that does to your economy on steroids. Imagine what fixing our immigration problem would do as an economist. It puts our economy on steroids. Imagine what having some common sense gun solutions would do. If you knew that AR-15s, by the way, my opponent doesn't want to give you a final answer on that. We need to have an assault weapons ban. The Democrats are not very clear on that. I told them a long time ago, I'm never going to say a mean thing about them, but I'm going to hit them on the record. We need to have an assault weapons ban, because I've seen what that gun can do to a child. That bullet travels 3 times as fast as a regular gun. This kid put Full Metal Jacket bullets in there and tore those little babies up to like you can't believe. So let's talk about it from some economic point of view, if you could even consider that. My children don't want to go to the mall anymore. They have anxiety when we go to the mall or the movies or church. That's the reality of what's happening to us here today, is that our life is no longer the same. My parents and your parents left this place better. My generation is not doing a good job at leaving this place better. And for me, this isn't about ambition. It's about doing everything in our power to come back to some sense of normalcy and decency where we all have a chance and we're all helping each other out once and for all, because we must.
I don't want to be overly focused on tactics, but I do want to ask, you said we have to do everything in our effort. There have been a lot of efforts by Democrats over the last 20, 25 years that have fallen short. I'm wondering how you think about that in this moment. What is it that you think can be done to reverse that, or to get a different result based on what you're saying?
Listen, there's 1 million registered non-voting Latinos in this state. We're going to wake them up. That sleeping giant, wake up. You need to wake up. And for all of the Latinos out there in the world that speak Spanish, levántate, mijito, porque ya te tienes que despertar. Ya tienes que cambiar lo que está sucediendo en este país. We must fight them at every issue that matters to us. And fight's a strong word, right? I used to say work. I used to say I'm working to do something better because I didn't want to say fight. But by God, their policies are killing our kids. Their policies are choking the middle class. Women, I'm sorry, but these people would rather have you in slavery. Look at where we are on reproductive rights. And let me be very clear. I don't know if there's a question on that. If I will, if there is, I'll stop.
No. Let's just go. It saves me. I can just go like this.
All right. Listen, this is clear. And Democrats might say, oh, no, don't say that because you're putting a target on your back. We need to expand the Supreme Court of the United States. There's no magic number for 9 or 5 or whatever it was. 150 years ago, 100 years ago, it moved to 9. You know why? Because there was 9 circuits in this country. Well, there's 13 circuits now. We need to have a Supreme Court that looks like America, not one that looks like the 1% of America, not one that likes to party and hang out and go to cruises and trips across the world with the 1%ers. That's what has happened to this so-called nonpartisan group of Supreme Court justices that are not supposed to be influenced. We need to have a senator that's not afraid to say, Charles Schumer, I'm sorry, but we're going to get rid of the filibuster. Some of you are going to Joe Manchin's deal later on. I'm sure he's a nice man. I met him once. But he's holding us up from having a country that tells these people to go to hell on reproductive rights. Women are being held hostage because these Republicans and their policies. And by the way, you're also dying. Mortality rates in this state have gone up in 1 year. In 1 year. So if you think that they're killing us is hyperbole, no, it isn't hyperbole. They're killing children, they're killing women, and they're choking us all. We've been scammed and we've been lied to by these people for 30 years. And we need to take our place, and we need to vote, and Hispanics need to get out and vote and get these people out of power.
Explain why you think you are the candidate that will do that. Because all due respect, many people in this room have heard Democrats say, this is the year we're going to mobilize the Latino vote. This is the year we're going to go to the border and we're going to crack the code, if you will. Tell me a little bit more. I think you demonstrated it, but I'd explain a little bit more how that happens and how that happens this cycle when it hasn't before.
Well, listen, I'll go back to Socrates, and I don't know the outcome in the end, right? But I can tell you that we're going to speak to them in their language. That's number one. We are absolutely have a story that is similar to theirs, which is I came from a poor working class family that did well for themselves. My father did very well for himself, and he put us through school and he pushed us, and it's the same kind of values. But I think that right now it's just a different time. Texas Monthly did a story, and I don't want to get onto this, and I probably shouldn't, but I guess I already started it. I guess already started it. They said, Allred had won his district and he turned it blue, and that's great. And there was some redistricting that had to do something to do with that as well. But they said he couldn't perform O'Rourke. And I love Beto to death. I mean, he's just amazing, that guy. And they said, wow, Beto outperformed that seat by 11 points. But the fact is the Hispanics have been outperforming most people on the ballot by over 3 points, time and time again. So we're right there. I mean, I thank Beto O'Rourke for putting us on the map and making and showing the world that, yes, we can. 270,000 votes. That's how many it was. So in a time where it looks like we're going to have Trump and Biden, for sure, we're going to get out there and we're going to talk to people in the Valley, and we're going to tell them they're lying to you, their politics are wrong, they're killing you, and we're going to be able to do that in their language. And I don't know that that's not exactly a qualitative answer. I don't have one, Jim. I don't have one other than the fact that I can tell you that I'm going to work harder than any of them because that's the way I was raised. And I'm going to talk to people, and we're going to push hard on the issues that matter most to all Americans. By the way, these Republican middle class, working class, and I guess there are some of them, right? They've been lied and they've been bamboozled more than anybody else in this room because those poor bastards actually believe this crap. They're actually living in rural Texas with no doctors and no counselors and no access to anything. And they think, oh, yeah, they got me. And when they get their kid into, and they're fortunate enough to get their kid into Texas A&M because that kid got into the top 6%, they think, hell, I made it. My kid's in there. Well, good luck with that $130,000 mortgage your kid's going to come out with. They have been screwed more than anybody out there.
As I hear you talk about your policy positions, I hear the argument you're making, the way that you tie the positions on gun policy, your experience, immigration policy, and comprehensive reform to economic growth. I'm struck by a few conversations I've had as there have been all these policy people and political people around. And, frankly, again, some of what I heard from, I also went to Senator Cruz's talk this afternoon to prepare for this. I was hoping somebody would thank me, but I am thinking about something that came up again in the congressman's talk, and that is this construct that there's something fundamentally different about being a Texas Democrat than being a national Democrat. And I think in some ways that's obviously true, but I think that's also often code for you have to run closer to the center and more moderately if you're going to be a Texas Democrat. How do you sort all that out? Because it seems to me you have a view of that.
Yeah, I mean, sure, I get it. I mean, I think that's what this notion that, Beto was too progressive. No, Beto was right on and he was telling people the truth. He was passionate about a moment where he said we should take everybody's guns away. Well, that's not what I'm saying. I never said it once. Hell, I own a whole bunch of guns. It's how I was raised. I don't own any AR-15s and I don't need them. The guy had a moment, but he touched everybody because we are being screwed over. This notion that we should be somehow in the middle, Jim, where's the middle got us? Where's it got any senator or representative over there that has a D behind their name that files some little bill? Everything that I've done in that building, Texas Monthly gave me an award this year. They called it the Bull of the Brazos. They said, well, he had 15 years of unremarkableness and all of a sudden he's remarkable. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you. Well, I'm here to tell you it's bullshit, and I'm going to tell you why. When Republicans wanted to go off and forestall growth in our military bases, I'm from Military City, USA. That's San Antonio. When you go after our military bases and allow a developer to go out and do whatever he wants around a military base, I fought and had through the session, into the special session, and I took my committee as a House member, as a chairman, all over Texas, and allied myself with a woman named Betsy Price, who's amazing, by the way. She says, those helicopters are the sound of freedom. Why is that important to us? It's not because, certainly I wanted to preserve our military because that's important. But the civilian jobs that made up San Antonio, 60,000 strong, that made up the 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s, that was what brought San Antonio to life. The people that worked in Oklahoma, the people that worked in San Antonio and sadly later had to shuffle up to Oklahoma when we closed Kelly. That's the lifeblood of what it was, of what we had. And we were able to save our military bases. We created the National Center for Warrior Resiliency, which keeps veterans off of opioids that the VA got them on. It's a 30-day treatment program. I created the last session prior to this one, the Farmer Suicide Prevention Act. All of those were amendments, and they had to swallow them and take them. You never knew that farmers had the highest incidence of suicide in the nation. And now Sid Miller walks around with a pamphlet. And God love him. You'll never hear another Democrat say anything nice about Sid Miller. God love him, he said in a committee hearing. Because of Gutierrez's amendment, we saved 60 lives. That's real stuff. It's real people. And we're all hurting here. I mean, all of us, even a few rich people hurt. But we're hurting. And until we start talking to each other about that pain, we have to talk to each other more. This nonsense about incrementalism, got to be in the middle, that's not going to win the day. What people want to see is someone fight for them. They want to see someone that cares. They want to see somebody that is not looking out for I don't care about, a title of being a U.S. Senator. I don't know that I necessarily want to live in Washington, D.C. for very long. You know what I'm going to do? God willing, the Lord elects me to this seat and you vote for me. I'm going to be in Washington. I'm going to vote when I need to vote. And I'm going to talk to people on all sides, including Marco Rubio and others. I'm going to say, let's do that immigration plan that you said that you wanted to do 10 years ago when you were in the Gang of Eight or the Group of Eight or whatever it was. Let's figure that out. And when I've exhausted myself trying to convince this fool, or others, I shouldn't call a future colleague.
It's not a very good pitch.
It's not good. When I've exhausted myself, I'm going to come back and we're going to work on the midterms. Because these people need to go from Texas. Patrick and Abbott and Paxton needs to go to prison. That's what we need from a statewide candidate, one that will not stop until this state changes. And I'm telling you, we are on the cusp. We are on the cusp of creating change. If we all band together, black, white, brown, and everybody, and talk to each other and realize that we're all in this mess together and we need to get ourselves out and we all need to rise up in a right way.
You gave me a great transition because I want to talk about the Paxton thing, but I'm not going to take it. Maybe because I'm a bad moderator, but we'll come back to it. But you also, I said I'd come back to this. Obviously, in your affect and the way you talk about your experience, in your very frank public discussions of the trauma you experienced after Uvalde, I have to ask, how are you? Because I think, I think it's a question that people might ask.
Listen, I'm better now. I wasn't well. I still tear up. At least they don't formulate. But there is nothing in the world like seeing a dead kid. There's just nothing. There's nothing about seeing in the world like seeing a dead kid the way I saw these dead kids. And some parents have asked me to let them see what I've seen, and I will not. I cannot. I love them too much, and I cannot let them see their children in this way. Even though they did see them at the morgue and such, I just cannot let them see this. Because you envision the pain. And I think if you're a parent in this room, you put yourself in this place and you think to yourself, that could have been me. That could have been my child. We are so broken in this thing on guns. This kid, we allowed this 18-year-old kid, who everybody called the school shooter, to go into a store on day one, buy an AR-15, on day two, buy 900 rounds of ammunition, and on day three, pick up his internet-bought AR-15. How in the world? It's a one gun shop in town. How in the world does anybody think this is a significant event here? After Parkland, Rick Scott, not exactly Mr. Liberal, in 21 days, they passed 23 laws in Florida to create extreme risk protective orders that every sheriff, Republican and Democrat, loves in Florida. They've executed 9,000 extreme risk protective orders to success. You see something, say something. We've heard that. Someone saw something here. They just didn't say something because they wanted to put the money in the cash register. And they said, this is not a thing. You're goddamn right it was a thing. This kid looked a mess. We are lost, and Ted Cruz is he's a piece of shit. Thank you. I heard you just say it. He sat there with Kim Rubio, my friend who's running for mayor. He sat there, had them in his office, put his arm around them, heard their story, tells them some bullshit. Oh, I'm going to pray for you, and we need to have more school hardening and all of this and that and the other. And then when he runs out of his Dr. Pepper, he asks his staff for another Dr. Pepper, and he just didn't give a shit about this couple. He used them for a photo op. He came to Uvalde just like I was. The only difference is I didn't leave. I was there for weeks on end and months on end after that. I spent almost 3 weeks there daily. And he came to Uvalde and he sat there and cried with a Republican sheriff. And he didn't care about these people. And the other candidates running in this race, he needs to take a position on this. Because we need an assault weapons ban. Because this damn gun, is not anything you want to be a part of. And listen, I'm open. We can have an exception for farmers that kill hogs from helicopters because we have the largest population of hogs in the nation. So there.
Hogs okay.
Yes.
All right, I can't get out of here without asking you about what happened in the Senate last weekend with the vote to, I've struggled with this word, but essentially acquit Ken Paxton, at least of the impeachment charges, and reinstall him. Now, everybody knows in this room is going to know what the outcome was, knows he escaped being removed from office. There was a gag order for a long time. Now there's a lot of maneuvering and post hoc explanation from the people that were considered quote unquote swing votes, mostly, not entirely in the Republican Party. Can you shed some process for us on how the process worked? In retrospect, was there ever a realistic chance that the Senate would have voted yes? They would have gotten a supermajority to vote yes on any of those articles?
Well, at some point somebody said that I was in the camera stream a lot. And they said, why do you look so angry? Why do you look so sleepy? No, I wasn't sleepy. I certainly was tired, and I was tired of the bullshit because I knew that from day one what the outcome was going to be. That side, the right side of that building, if you're looking from south to north, is bought and paid for by Dan Patrick, and he controls them. And there's two people that I have a tremendous newfound respect for, and that's Kelly Hancock and Robert Nichols. You can clap. At some point, you have to be able to say, what's right is right. If that had been a Democrat or someone black or brown or just a poor white Democrat, well, there wouldn't be any impeachment. Then we'd have gone straight to prison. Let's be really clear what the evidence was. This guy sold political favors in exchange for $120,000 in a remodeling, in exchange for a job for his girlfriend, in exchange for even fake Uberize. The next time you see Ken Paxton, call him Dave, because that was his fake name, Dave P. So Dan Patrick has a fake name too. A lot of fake names here in the Republican Party. Dave P., also known as Ken Paxton, received hundreds of thousands of dollars for political favor. He intervened in foreclosures. He intervened in, you name it, in lawsuits for this guy using your tax dollars. If you're a Republican out there, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Ken Paxton is a crook. He should be in jail. He's going to be in jail. He's going to be in jail. It was that black and white. And what happened in there was an abrogation of their duty, a travesty of justice, and a bunch of Republicans that have no fortitude whatsoever.
I'm going to go to Q&A after one more question. So if you all have questions, you want to start lining up. 2 microphones here. I really want to ask, there's a bunch of different ways to ask this. I really just want to ask you, was it really that simple? I mean, I know a lot of people that as we were going through the process, there was some sense that, people might look at this in, a halfway objective way that was based on the facts as they were being laid out. I think a lot of the people that thought that, including my, now feel foolish. I mean, should we feel foolish for that?
Yes. young people in this room won't. There was a remake of this movie. This was no 12 Angry Men. Remember 12 Angry Men? Was that Henry?
IMDb it now.
Was that Henry Fonda? Was that Henry?
Yeah, Henry Fonda was the star of that.
Yeah, Henry Fonda.
It was dating ourselves, but
it was remade. By the way, my favorite movie is Cool Hand Luke. So there you know. If you want to know what kind of political candidate I'm going to be, I'm Luke. In this movie, I am Cool Hand Luke. Here's the deal. This was no 12 Angry Men. The ones that knew. A few of them pretended. And by the end of the evening, we all had some fajitas, and the next morning, we came back, and it was a done deal. By the time I left on Friday night, there was 5 people on their side. The next morning, there was just 2. Those 2 men, real fortitude. The rest of them, I don't know what they saw, because all that crap you saw from their lawyers, that was just made for TV crap. The evidence, thousands of pages of documentary evidence. The FBI will come crashing down on this guy soon. And they should. And if they don't, then we've got a real problem in this country.
Unambiguous answer. Okay, let's go to questions. I'm going to start over here. And just a reminder, questions end in question marks and are relatively short.
Okay, my first question is, I respect your work in Uvalde, but we also have to remember Uvalde was red and did vote for Trump. And you talk about the Latino vote, and the Valley, they recently elected Mayra Flores at the U.S. House, and Monica de la Cruz, also a Hispanic female, also became Congresswoman. So my question for you is, if you're for Hispanics and they've recently voted red, and even you look at Lupe Valdez, who lost the Texas race by a landslide, do you think this is a good model to get out the Latino vote when it's been historically red also in the Valley? I mean,
well, it's not historically red. First off, Mayra Flores was a special election.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be clear, and thank you for your question. The fact is, this notion that the Republicans are making inroads in the Valley is nonsense. And the fact is, we're not voting. Hispanics are not voting.
I agree.
And they need to vote. They need to truly vote.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea that, Hispanics are just more conservative because of abortion or whatever it is, the vast majority of Hispanics are Democrats, about 76%. That's a reality. Uvalde is also a different construct. You got to understand, Uvalde never busted. It's I'm going to give you the short answer on Uvalde.
That's fine.
It never busted like all the counties around it. The white power elite didn't move to Houston or Dallas or San Antonio. They stayed there. They still run the show. They still have all the jobs, and they still tell people what to do. And they run it that way. And so you have to understand that and see it and live it. That said, we're going to try to organize and get people moving in the right direction in small towns across this state. The 300,000 votes that we need to win, those Latinos, they're in Houston, they're in Dallas, they're in the Valley, but they're also in each one of these counties everywhere. It's a marginal shift from county to county. We're going to get there, but we have to start talking about people about what matters most to them. And for some, it might be guns and they're killing our kids, but the biggest issue behind my candidacy, the biggest talking point, is really our pocketbooks. It's our jobs and our future, because they're killing us that way too. The fact is, when I was a kid, when I was your age, college was really affordable. And when he was in college, it was really, really affordable.
Well, I was in California.
And then something called deregulation happened. And that's when you got screwed. And that's when he got screwed. And that's when these young ladies got screwed over. We will talk to Latinos across this state about what life should be like, not to be satisfied with what it is. Simple as that.
Good question. Thank you. Let's go over here.
So it's pretty much hi. So it's pretty much the same thing with Hispanics. Now that Hispanics are the majority in the state, what is your main goal to get us to reach out? Like as you said, Hispanics are in the main cities. So what are you going to do, or what should somebody like me do to get them to turn out? Because they're not doing anything. They're just standing there listening.
Well, you tell them, for everybody that says the government doesn't do anything and that my vote doesn't matter, you tell them what I tell them. You tell them because of Republican policies, 19 children and 2 teachers are dead. Imagine that. That's the truth. We have a law that says you have to be 21 to buy a handgun, but you can be 18 and buy an AR-15. That makes no sense. Okay? Imagine had it been 21. This young man tried 2 straw purchases. Because your friends that didn't vote, sounds rough. 19 kids and 2 teachers died. Now, we can go on from issue to issue and issue, and I can tell you what happens when you vote and when you don't vote. But all you have to do is spend a whole session, or hell, the last 2 weeks in this building during the session, and figure out how you're getting screwed. You tell every kid to watch the last 2 weeks of what happens in this building, or what happens with Ted Cruz and John Cornyn at the helm, and you tell them how you're getting screwed. Because they're getting screwed. All you got to do is open your eyes and open your ears. Simple as that.
You get all that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go over here.
Hey there, how's it going? I like your humor. I'm from District 38 in Harris County, and I just wanted to point out that, Colin Allred, he seems to be trending on Twitter and across young voters, so he's looking like he's clearly the front runner. So what do you have to say about Colin?
Yeah, we'll see.
All right.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know that. Listen, man, our campaign looks like a real campaign. We travel this state. He doesn't. I don't really. He's a nice fella.
Sure.
I can tell you that I'm going to outwork him.
Nice.
No amount of incrementalism, if that's his philosophy or yours for that matter. I don't know. Maybe I don't have your vote, and I apologize if I don't. I want to earn your vote.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I'm considered a libertarian, so I swing. So, I was just wanting to get your take on Colin because he seems to be trending on Twitter, and I've been retweeting a lot of his stuff.
Well, when you have a whole bunch of money, that happens, right? And so we're raising money every day. We talk to people every day, and if you're a libertarian, you'll love my position on cannabis.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We need more.
Thank you very much.
A new issue in the Q&A. Sir.
Good evening. I actually saw you at the Cesar Chavez March, and I've been kind of following your entire campaign as you've gone along. But as a current student, there's been a lot of talk about school choice going on. I wanted to hear your opinion about school choice.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, that's all bullshit too. That's my answer.
That's a very flexible answer.
Yeah, I can use that for everything. 160,000 kids get a free voucher while the other 4.8 billion kids get screwed. There's a theme in this campaign, right? We chose screwed because it sounded better than the other word. Listen, it's just bullshit. There's not one state in this country that has had a successful voucher program, period. Other Republican nut governors have tried. Not one successful voucher program in the country, period. Simple as that. I get that I shouldn't say this. I'm a little, hell. I'm a cafeteria Catholic. There you have it. I'm pissed off that archbishops are coming up here and lobbying for this crap because it's nonsense and they're hurting their kids. They're hurting the rest of the kids in the parish. Okay? They're hurting the rest of the kids in their parishes. We have to do something very real on education. And let's take those $5 billion we're wasting on the border and put them to education. Public education. Public education. There is an absolute quantitative correlation between how much you spend on a kid and how your school districts or how your state performs on education. We're 43rd in spending, 43rd in performance. Massachusetts up at the top, they spend a lot of money, but their kids are coming out brilliant. Why does that matter? Because those kids are driving the economy. I promise you spend more on education. It's a long play. Republicans don't like long play solutions. In 18 years, you will have a smarter electorate. But guess what? They don't want smarter electorates. That's their dirty secret. They want to make us dumb and dumber, so we don't vote. I'm here to tell you got to push back because you don't know what you're missing. When you go travel around this country and you see states that are truly doing for their constituents on health care, we didn't talk about that, on education, on infrastructure. Molly Ivins, who is a great woman that I never met, and I wish I could have partied with her. Did you party with her?
Sort of.
She said this great...
That's another story for over a beer.
Yeah, we have lots of beer talk, Jim and I. I just found out who his wife is. His wife has been a dear friend for 13 years. I never knew that this was her husband. 19 years, my God. Here's the deal. Molly Ivins said, Texas and Mississippi are a lot alike. Both low tax, low service states. The only difference is we can afford to do a hell of a lot better. And we sure can. Second highest revenue state in the nation. And these people that run this building and people like Ted Cruz have us playing poor boy politics, and they're poor boying us to death just so that they can stay in power. We deserve so much more. I want to run across this state. If you like what we have to say, go to Roland for Texas. Certainly, please contribute money, sir, because we need some. And we do pretty well on TikTok, by the way. I think we're doing better on TikTok than old Colin or anybody else. The kids love us. And they love us because we say crazy stuff. But we're going to keep going. We're going to keep talking to people. We're going to go across this state, and we're going to have this conversation because we must. Because we must. I want to thank y'all. I think we're done.